Hey everyone, it's Dominick from the Comic Book Report YouTube channel, back doing another guest review for, you guessed it, Organic Price Books. And definitely buckle up, because today I'm diving in to provide a brief overview for one book that's been on my to-read list for some time. I'm talking about Catwoman, Lonely City. This book was written and illustrated by Chiang. The comics themselves were published by DC Comics beginning in 2021. This is part of DC Comics' Black Label. The volume itself includes Catwoman, Lonely City, issues 1 through 4, and this is a nice glossy print paper-stocked book that has a glued binding and is in an oversized format. In fact, the pages are much more square looking, which I'll show you in comparison to some other titles soon. But before I do that, let's take some more looks at this dust jacket. It's absolutely exquisite. We have Chiang's really signature style here showcased very beautifully. This is really indicative of the kind of art quality you can expect throughout this entire book. I first became aware of Chiang's work when I read things like his run with Brian Azzarello on Wonder Woman during the New 52 era over at DC, and his work, of course, on Paper Girls over at Image. Like I mentioned at the top, this has been on my to-read list for some time. I've heard a lot of people saying this is one of their favorite Catwoman stories of all time, and now that I've read it, I could safely say the same for myself. This was a triumph, a modern masterpiece, at least in my opinion. I had so much fun visiting this dystopian future look at Gotham, and following Catwoman, well, it just was a blast from page 1 all the way to the conclusion. I should say as well, this cover I have is, I believe, the standard edition cover for this release. There is also a direct market cover you can look into getting as well. I'll try to show a snippet of what that one looks like here so you can compare. Speaking of comparisons, this is the book next to a standard size trade paperback. In this case, it's one of the Nightwing New 52 paperbacks. As you can see, this is an oversized format, both in height and width, which is kind of fun. I'll also do a size comparison with an omnibus. As far as I can tell, this is about the same height as an omnibus, it just goes far wider, having that kind of square format. This is really similar to releases like Harleen, if you've read that from DC Comics, or Fantastic Four Full Circle was another one that utilized this format, Superman Year One. At any rate, it's a really great format to showcase some incredible art. And speaking of incredible art, we're going to do one final look at that dust jacket. This time I'm also going to show you those interior flaps of the dust jacket, spread it all out so you can get one final look at what this beautiful dust jacket looks like on this book. Before I show you the under the dust jacket artwork, they went ahead and printed on the hardback book itself. I really love that a lot of these modern books from a lot of the big publishers all have under the dust jacket artwork. This isn't something you saw even 10 years ago with collected editions, so I really love this facet, and for a book like this that's such an art book, it was cool to get some bonus artwork on there. I will say under the dust jacket though, they could have done a little bit more in my opinion. The spine is stamped with the title basically, and we do have some really beautiful artwork on the front cover with Catwoman. The back cover is just a straight black though, and the actual hardback is pretty glossy, but it's still a really fun print. I'm happy to see some art on the book. And now I'll just go ahead and set this down here. You can get one final look, and then we'll transition to taking a look there at the binding. As I mentioned, the binding for me appears to be glued. I had no issues with it. You'll see this book lays down pretty well, at least in my estimation, but you'll get to see as I flip through the book kind of what you feel like about the gutter loss, things like that. Personally, I had no issues whatsoever, but I want to give all prospective collectors out there a look at the binding. And with all that said and done, we can dive into the book proper, and right from the jump, I have to say, this book was worth the wait for me. I know it's been released for a while now, but I finally had this chance to read it. Really enjoyed it. The basic setup, and I'm going to go very light to no spoilers here, so that it's just a general overview of what you can expect, and you can still enjoy it for yourself. As far as what this book is, Catwoman has been in prison the last 10 years after something called Fool's Night, where a lot of Gotham's heroes and some of the villains were killed in a kind of large criminal terrorist-like attack in Gotham City. The story will jump back and forth between the present moment, which is the 10-year in the future Gotham City, and flashbacks throughout different times in Catwoman's history, primarily the night of Fool's Night and leading up to it. But this is really a Catwoman story, and I want to say that first and foremost. This is not a Batman book. This is a Catwoman book, this is a Gotham book, and this is a Bat family kind of book. Batman does make some appearances in this book through the use of flashbacks, but this is primarily Catwoman's book, and it's stronger for that. It really has a perspective and a story to tell here. So we have Catwoman getting out of prison to find the world moving on without her. She's older, perhaps a little bit wiser, but maybe not quite as spry as she once was. She's trying to get in her old rhythms, adjust to this new world around her, catch up with some old friends, adversaries, colleagues, let's call them, and she's trying to get established again as Catwoman. But we find Gotham is much changed from what she knew 10 years ago. In fact, Gotham is little more than a police state that's enforced by these armed guards everywhere on the streets who look suspiciously like Batman characters. It's really a kind of intense setup to the future of Gotham City. We have a mayor who is maybe someone you wouldn't expect, maybe someone in Batman's Rogues Gallery, and I'll stop right there. But it is a really fascinating look at what the city can become. And we have Catwoman really feeling like a fish out of water, deeply out of place, and we find out before too long that she was given almost one last assignment from Bruce Wayne after Fool's Night to basically check in on some kind of secret project or thing he had locked up in the Batcave. But we find the Batcave under lock and key, and Catwoman basically has to find her way in. So this whole book is kind of like a heist narrative, or a sequence of little heists that lead up to a big heist. But because of that, we have a sort of genre feel to this book that gives it a really good sense of tension and conflict and through line, again being set up a lot like a heist narrative. We have her assembling a team, getting prepared, and then we have these little missions and these heists. I will say that there is a lot of superheroics involved as well. We are in Gotham. There are still some mainstay characters that you will recognize both in flashbacks and the presently set moment. I loved to see that. There's also a lot on grief and life and kind of processing all these things. There's some definitely commentary on age and letting go of the past and kind of finding your identity and footing again, new normals, transformation. It really is a very layered story that is kind of dressed up as a simpler heist narrative, and I think it is really, really strong. In fact, this is a book I'm sure I'm going to read again and again. I do feel like it does follow a lot of great plot bits that we see in, one, superhero stories, but two, those heist narratives that have become so popular, especially in film. I'm very impressed by everything Chiang was able to accomplish in this book, especially because he wore all the hats in this situation as writer, artist. I think he even did the color work. Just a really impressive book brought to us completely by Chiang. I was really intrigued the kinds of characters and Easter eggs we got within this book, some again from Batman's Rogues Gallery and some just from the broader DC universe, and I won't spoil that here. Suffice it to say, this book definitely packs quite a punch. I know for me as well, there is 4 issues in this series, and the issues are a little bit longer than your standard books, and we have that overlarge format, so the book still takes a little bit of time to get through. It's not the longest book ever, but you do feel like you get a very solid reading experience, and I loved that. I do think that this is going to be a modern classic for DC fans out there, particularly fans of Batman or Catwoman. And frankly, I'm ecstatic that it's gracing my shelves. This book was a ton of fun, and it had a surprising amount of heart throughout it. I do think it's worth an investment. You can still find it in print now and at a really good price point, especially at organicpricedbooks.com. I know for me, this was one of my favorite standout reads of the year so far. I think the art is absolutely tremendous. You could buy this as an art piece alone. I think the art is that strong. The fact that the narrative is also that good just makes this one heck of a book. I will say it is part of DC's Black Label, so we have instances of violence, sexual situations, though it wasn't a ton of nudity or anything like that that I saw. That was pretty minimal, but there was some profanity. In fact, there were several uses of things like the F word, so if you're a younger reader or someone that wants to get this for someone younger, just please be advised this is a more adult-centered book, but I do think that it is pretty accessible to new readers or prospective fans out there. We do have a healthy amount of extras here at the back that you're being treated to. I think because this book leans so heavily on the art, all of these added extras between different covers and character models are a real treat for collectors like me. And that's going to do it today for our quick overview of Catwoman Lonely City. If you're interested in picking up your copy, again, definitely check out organicpricedbooks.com for this standard edition, or you can see if they still have any direct market copies in stock. And if you'd like more reviews from me, The Comic Book Report, you can check out my channel, The Comic Book Report. In fact, I'm going to try to do a more in-depth review of this book on my channel in the coming weeks. Thank you for thinking about it, and have a good one.